right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Karen Wendt, and I am honored to be among those who nominated the recipient of the 2026 Lucy Beck Award. The Lucy Beck Award is an annual recognition of a Wisconsin storyteller who has contributed to the achievement and nurturing of storytelling in Wisconsin. Lucy Beck was a distinguished children's librarian. Yay for children's librarian. She was a distinguished children's librarian in Kenosha who held multiple degrees in library science and received numerous accolades throughout her career. An adventurous traveler and a passionate storyteller, Lucy dedicated her energy to sharing stories with people of all ages. There is a full presentation about Lucy Beck on the Wisconsin Storytelling YouTube channel. So if you haven't been there yet, Sederi Saskill did an amazing presentation last year about Lucy. And so if you want to know more about Lucy, go and watch that video. The Lucy Beck Award is an annual recognition dedicated to her memory. It honors a peer-selected Wisconsin storyteller who has made noteworthy contributions to the nurturing and achievement of storytelling in our state. And this year, I'm so happy to announce that the recipient of the Lucy Beck Award is Conant, Gilles. We believe that Coral perfectly exemplifies Lucy's legacy. Since I first met Coral in 2013 at the Monona Storytelling Club, she has been an invaluable supporter of our community, consistently stepping up to lead meetings and volunteer at Wistget gatherings, and she does so much in the community. The following is just one paragraph that I wrote to nominate Coral for the award, and I'd like to read it to you. Coral uses storytelling in a wonderful way to promote a love of life, adventure, and connection. While she is primarily focused in the Madison area, her creative nature-based programming successfully integrates storytelling for people of all ages. As a former librarian, I often found it difficult to draw audiences to dedicated storytelling programs. However, when Coral brought nature exploration and crafting to my library and embedded stories into those experiences, the response was overwhelmingly positive. Her ability to build a successful business model around this integration is truly remarkable. Coral's innovative work integrates storytelling with nature exploration and crafting. Her nature-based programming successfully connects audiences to their communities and personal narratives, fostering mental health and a sense of wonder. Coral contributes to Wisconsin storytelling by volunteering at storytelling events and leading groups, deepening connections to land and self through story, strengthening imagination and empathy in both children and adults, reaching new audiences by embedding stories in multidisciplinary programs. I have more. Sharing stories from diverse cultures to broaden world views and understanding of people and culture. And most recently, raising funds for community organizations. Please join me in congratulating Conant, Gilles. Yeah.
What an honor. It's kind of unbelievable. This is the room full of my mentors and the people I admire in the world, and I don't know, it seems a little odd to be the one who's receiving the award from all of you. But I'm honored, and I hope that I can be all of the things that you see in me.
You are already.
I appreciate you all a lot.
Eileen brings an enormous, beautiful, incredible bouquet of flowers for the Lucy Beck Award winner. And she's done it again, right? Look at this, look at that. And that's for,
woodland flowers.
yeah, that is for Coral to take home.
Yeah, so you can take that home. So we can put it back on the table.
Let me now please introduce you to Sarah Beth is a fellow traveler, a fellow outdoor adventurist, and a fellow storyteller who also helps run the Whitewater Storytelling Festival. Please welcome Sarah Beth.
We just heard a lot about Coral, but she is our first storyteller as the award winner, so I'll just say a little bit more. Coral Conant Gilles is a storytelling naturalist. She uses storytelling, hands-on nature activities, and outdoor play to inspire curiosity, empathy, and connection with ourselves, each other, and the natural world. Coral believes this is at the heart of healing ourselves, our relationships, and our local and global communities of human and non-human beings.
Every week, I get to spend the day with 4 to 7-year-olds. The same group of kids come outside with me all day long, and we play, and we offer gratitude, we sing songs. We're out there in the rain and in the snow, and when the lakes are frozen, and when the spring puddles come out and the toads are mating. We're out there on beautiful days like today when the trees are full of flowers. One of the things we get to do every year is maple syrup together. We used to have a county park that we were able to go to and tap the trees that the previous landowner had planted and wanted tapped, but as relationships change, we lost that opportunity. So a few years ago, we started thinking about where can we go? How can we still access this maple sap? Last year, we decided to ask all of our families to look around their homes, look around their yards, their neighbors' yards, their neighborhoods, and see if there were any maple trees they might be able to tap. I love maple syruping. Maple syruping happens at this time of year where everything has been cold and dark and gray for so long that spring feels impossible. But the birds, they start singing, and the trees, they believe in spring. So maple syruping is that very first gift of spring when the trees start to send those sugars up into their buds, because they know that these days, the ones we have right now, will come. And when I have that connection to those trees and to the land, I feel whole and well and grounded. But I don't have a maple tree in my yard. There's a sugar maple across the street, but it's part of a city park, and the city does not want anything to do with you tapping their trees. And my neighbor has a street tree, but that is also a city-owned maple. So I sent an email to my neighbors. And I don't live in a cute little neighborhood with like 100 people and I know them all. This is the city-sanctioned neighborhood that incorporates all of the Monona Bay area and the Winger Creek area in Madison. But we have a listserv, so I emailed them and I said, hey, you know, I've got these kids and like I want to have this program with them and I need maple sap, and anybody got a tree? And 3 people emailed me back. And those 3 people had 4 different maple trees, 2 silver maples and 2 red maples that they said I could tap. So on a warm, late winter afternoon, my kids and I piled into the van and we drove to Dan's house. Now remember that warm, late winter is like 37 degrees. So we got out of the van in this nice, warm, late winter day, and I said, you know, Dan said he probably wouldn't be here, but we could go back and tap his tree. Go knock on the door just in case Dan is available. My kids, they were 7 and 10 at the time. They went, they knocked, and Dan was not home. They came around to the back. Which tree is it? Which tree is it? Can we tap it? Can I have the drill? Can I have the drill? Hold on. Which tree is it? I subscribe to an education philosophy that has me asking many more questions than I answer. So I did not tell them which tree it was. I said, well, what do you know? How do we identify a maple tree when there's no leaves? And my 10-year-old said, it has opposite leaves. I said, okay, what if the leaves aren't there? it also has opposite twigs. What does that mean? Okay, that means that the twigs are like this instead of like this. Yes. Okay, so which trees have opposite branching? Where do you see a lot of opposites? You're gonna see alternates, or what looks like that, because a lot of them will die. But where do you see a lot of opposite? That one, that one, that one. Can I tap it? Can I tap it? Can I have the drill? Hold on. Okay, that's the maple tree. Great. Now, the next thing we need to do is make sure it's big enough. Do you know how big it needs to be? 10 inches. I learned this in school. It has to be 10 inches in diameter. Great. Here is a measuring tape. It's 10 3/4 inches. It's big enough. It's big enough. Can we tap it? Can I have the drill? Okay. Hold on. Okay, we know that it's a maple and it's big enough. Let's make sure it's healthy. Look up into the tree. Do you see cracks, broken branches, sloughing bark? Or do you see buds that are ready to grow? I think it's healthy. Can we tap it? Can I have the drill? All right. We want a gift from this tree, right? Instead of just taking it, could we offer gratitude? Could we ask the tree? Oh, yeah. Do you have anything? I brought some lavender buds. This is a practice that, for me, years ago would have felt very foreign, would have felt very intimidating. But my kids and I have grown into this practice of offering gratitude to all the non-human beings around us regularly, and even asking permission before harvesting plants, including tapping a maple tree. So they weren't thrown off by this, they were ready. And we took the little pinches of lavender buds. My 7-year-old and I put our hands and our faces up against the trunk. We began to offer gratitude in whatever way works for us. It's a very personal choice. And my 10-year-old, he got down on the ground and he put his hands on the roots and he said, "The trees communicate with their roots in the fungus where the mycorrhizae is." Yeah, great. We asked permission from the tree in whatever way felt good for us, and we listened for that response with our mind or our body or our hearts or our intuition. And we stepped back. What'd you hear? I heard yes! And we all did. We had all heard, yes, you can tap this tree. So we got out the drill, and they wanted to tap it themselves. I said, hold on, this is the first time I've ever tapped a maple tree without my mentors here. So let me do the first one. Hopefully we have 4 trees to do. I got the drill and we drilled into the trunk of the tree. As soon as the drill broke the flesh of the tree, sap started to drip out. It was pouring out of that hole. As we were drilling the hole in, Dan got home. He joined us as we pounded the spile into the side of the tree. A spile is a metal tube that is somewhere between a straw and a funnel that directs that sap into your bucket. We pounded that spile in, and the sap stopped. We held our breath. A dam broke loose, and that sap gushed into the bucket. My kids grabbed the bucket off the tree. They stuck their heads under the spile. They knew exactly what to do, and soon they had Dan under there too, sticking his head under the spile and catching those first drips of spring goodness, of hope and joy, and the promise of songbirds and warmth. We said goodbye to Dan and we went to Jane's house. Jane had said she wanted to be there. She said, "I've lived in Wisconsin for years. I have never tapped a maple tree. I have 2 maple trees in my yard. I want to do this with you." So my kids went to the door and out comes Jane. Jane is an older woman. And here are my 2 young children. And Jane wants to learn from us. I said, okay, we did this. Can you teach Jane? Jane wants to learn how we do this. They were like, yeah. First, we have to figure out which one the maple tree is. Well, Jane knows which one the maple tree is. She invited us over. There's a red maple in the front. It's the only tree there. There's a silver maple in the back. It is so large, it is leaning over the entire house. She knows this. But she is gracious, and she is kind, and she is patient, and she listens to my children. They say, maple trees have opposite branching. I said, okay, does Jane know what that means? Jane didn't. And they taught her. The 7 and 10-year-old taught this older woman the difference between opposite and alternate branching right there in her front yard on this warm 37-degree day. And then they looked at the tree and they said, well, now we have to make sure it's big enough. I tried to hand them the tape measure. They said, oh, it's big enough. It's bigger than the first one. Okay, yeah, I can see that. So we agreed to that. Now we need to make sure it's healthy, they tell Jane. We look up into the tree and agree, as far as we can tell, this tree looks healthy. Can I tap it? Can I do it? Hold on. Let's ask for permission. Let's offer gratitude. But now my heart's beating really fast. Because it's one thing to talk to trees with your children. It's a whole nother thing to talk to this neighbor who is a stranger and tell her you're going to ask the tree to tell you if it's okay to tap the tree. But I remembered that even if it feels strange, even if I'm not ever sure if those messages are coming from somewhere other than inside myself, it teaches me and Jane and my children to slow down and move with respect, to work in a way that feels so much more like reciprocity than what we're normally doing. And so we offered Jane our lavender buds. We said, you can offer gratitude any way that works for you. You can ask for permission in any way that works for you. There is no wrong answer. Jane and my 7-year-old and I put our hands and our faces up against the trunk, and Kieran went back down to the ground and put his hands on the roots. A few minutes later, we stepped back, and I must have been really nervous because I totally put Jane on the spot. I turned and said, so what'd you hear, Jane? And Jane was so kind. She said, I don't know that I heard any answer, but I felt like this tree was strong and healthy, and it would be okay to tap the tree. Oh. And I said, I didn't really hear a strong answer either. And when that happened, I asked, if I don't have a strong answer, can I go with what the kids say? And with that, I heard a strong yes. So I turned to the kids, and they heard yes. We tapped that tree, and just like before, when we tapped in the spile, the sap stopped flowing, but burst forth and poured into the buckets. We cheered, they ripped the bucket off the tree, they taught Jane how to stick her head under the spile and catch the drips. Later, we went to the backyard and tapped the silver maple, and then to Eric's house and tapped his maple. And when the season ended, I knew that experience had been so much more powerful for me than I had ever planned. I just needed maple sap. And here I had felt this deep connection with my neighbors and with the trees that we all lived with, and I wanted more of that. So this year, I emailed those 3 neighbors again, and I emailed the whole listserv, and I reminded them of what we did last year, and I said, I even wrote this article for our neighborhood group all about what we did because I loved it so much. I was so proud of my children and so grateful to be so connected to our neighbors. Would anyone else let us tap their trees? And 2 more people responded. This year we tapped 6 trees at 5 houses and hung 7 buckets. One of the trees was really big. Some of these neighbors I did not meet while we were tapping. One of the neighbors, we tapped the tree having never met her. We pulled the spiles back out still having never met her because the season was over. Another neighbor was a lot like Jane, fully enthusiastic, ready to be there for the whole thing, asking my kids lots of questions, but decades younger. And at the end, I had enough sap that I could take it to my programs and I could boil with my neighbors. I invited the whole neighborhood over one Saturday morning. We had a big fire right in the driveway, and we pulled out the boiling pans and we poured in the sap. The first neighbor to come by was the one we had never met. She was there for hours. She tasted the sap that hadn't been boiled yet. She tasted the sap in multiple stages as it got richer and sweeter. She hung out with us. Neighbors came by that I had never met, that I'd never talked to before, but they'd seen my email. Neighbors came by, there was one of my favorites was this old man who drove up, leapt out of his car with 2 cups, came over, barely said anything more than, I used to have a maple grove and I used to tap maple trees, but I haven't in many years. He scooped 2 cups full of the raw sap and went back to his car, clearly so joyed to be able to access this sap that must have been such a rich part of his life for so many years. We had neighbors come by that I'd emailed with, but had never met in person. We had friends come by. We had people come in off the street. We boiled for hours until we had thick, rich, syrupy sap. And I looked at what we'd created, and I thought, this is exactly what we need. I have needs, and when I put those out there, so often my needs are your gifts, and so often your needs are my gifts. And when we come together in this diversity, we find that we are all so much more richly connected and whole and grateful because of each other. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Coral. I'm thinking about how the roots of those trees all over your neighborhood are connecting the trees and letting them talk to each other. And now the people in your neighborhood are even more connected by tapping the trees and sharing the syrup. It's lovely. It's a story that we need right now.